Welcome back. Just a quick note before we start the video, and I want to be very clear here. I am not praising or glorifying lockdowns. I do acknowledge the devastating socio-economic impacts of lockdowns, but I do think that some lessons can be learned by observing human behavior in lockdowns. And so the concepts and activities put forward in this video are in part inspired by what I saw in lockdown these last couple weeks, but what I'm proposing is very different. And it is very much pro-business and pro-society. So with that out of the way, let's start the video. Hello folks, just a little update from Phnom Penh. We are finally re-emerging from the strict lockdown. Today is the very last day of lockdown, and those of us who are in the yellow zones are fortunate enough to be able to go into the outside world. That being the case, let's go take a walk around Phnom Penh and see how the world looks on the last day of lockdown. And we are outside that sweet, fresh, it smells more like fish sauce. I've ordered myself a pasap who will take me into town. And I suppose while waiting for the pasap, let me introduce you to our guard dog, Snowy. At least that's what we've named him, and he definitely doesn't get his 10,000 steps a day, more like 10. Come to think of it, I've never really seen him walk. I'm a little worried for you, little guy. You best take better care of yourself, because walking is important, and that is one of the topics in this video. Okay, tuk-tuk time. As we make our way into town, you can see the streets are more quiet than in any of my previous videos, which is quite pleasant, but at what cost to society? With the lockdown, most shops have had to shut their doors, leaving many people having to rely on human generosity, which is unfortunately in limited supply these days. If you can, do please check out the Local for Local and Art for Local campaigns that I am contributing to. Together, we are doing great work to distribute food to those who are in greatest need. More info on this in the video description below and at the end of the video. Okay, now let us go explore the areas surrounding Central Market. So, truth be told, we actually came out yesterday hoping to go shopping, and we wanted to see if the shops had reopened, and it turns out, well, they hadn't, and we still need a few bits and pieces for the new apartment, but we were so close to Central Market, we decided to go for a walk, which turned into somewhat of a photo shoot, and there I got the inspiration to make this video. One thing we noticed when we were walking around is the abundance of cyclos next to the very much car-free streets, which is very welcomed. I imagine this is what it was like probably in the 1990s. Lots of cyclos and very few motorized vehicles, and just a much more pleasant Central Market to go walk around. So today I wanted to come out, and instead of taking photographs, I wanted to make a couple of videos, because after today, we may never see Central Market this quiet again, this void of traffic. So today, there's already far more cars than there was yesterday, and I presume that tomorrow things will look a lot like normal. And normal here is heavy traffic, lots of noise and congestion. It's completely overstimulating and unpleasant, and you'll never see people walking, running, or cycling like you see today. It may never look like this again, unless, actually, let me get to that a little later in the video. First, I'd like to give you a little bit of background and context to this idea that I would like to propose through the reason that brings me in Cambodia. So first, let me tell you a little bit about what I do professionally, my real job, my 9-to-5, and I would like to involve you in this idea. So professionally, I'm an urban/transport planner, more on the transport side, and I often get asked, Conrad, what exactly does that mean? What do you do? So basically, I work on large-scale master planning projects. I work on drafting policies and regulations to better manage and operate cities, and I work on urban design projects, for example, to make them more pedestrian-friendly or better for cyclists. And I've worked on projects like this around the world, in Africa, the Middle East, and now Asia, for the likes of the UN, the World Bank, NGOs, and currently I work for the German Development Cooperation. It's a really awesome profession if you want to have a real impact in this world. And in this job, we really get to shape the world around us. We often go unnoticed. Very few people give thought to who makes the decisions about their built environment, but everything you see around you is the outcome of conscious decision making that tends to happen over years, decades, even centuries. Central Market right here, for example, was built in the French colonial time together with the street pattern that makes up the city center of Phnom Penh, which has remained for the most part unchanged. And this legacy left behind by the French is not such a bad thing. I find Phnom Penh a much more pleasant city than Bangkok, Manila, or Jakarta, where they have dissected the city with big highways and motorways. They've become very unpleasant cities that you can only get around in a private car, which has also resulted in spreading land uses. People have to live further away from the city center, and that's inherently unsustainable. You need more resources to cater for the private car. Socially, they're also very negative because people have to live further away from dense communities, and there's a lower likelihood of knowing your neighbors, which reduces safety. And there's also a study that shows that if you commute for more than 45 minutes a day, there's a much higher likelihood of you getting divorced later in life. And Phnom Penh, on the other hand, it still remains somewhat compact within this street network that was drawn up all this time ago, and you can still walk and cycle around the city. Walk, not so much, but definitely cycle. And the main point I want you to take away from this long-winded monologue is that the decisions we make today, they will have a long-lasting legacy. So it's extremely important we make good decisions and sustainable decisions about how we develop our cities. And I've chosen to work specifically on transport planning projects in emerging cities. Emerging cities are cities that are undergoing very rapid development, and through transport you can have a very considerable impact on society. If, for example, you build a public transport system like a metro, you can impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis. And that was all a little bit theoretical, but I think it was necessary for you to understand my work here in Cambodia. So let's get into that right now. I basically work on an urban governance project for the German Development Agency, known as GIZ, and my project itself is called SMMR, Summer, which stands for Sustainable Mobility in Metropolitan Regions in ASEAN. And ASEAN is like the EU of Southeast Asia and includes 10 countries. Through a project, we work on a number of sustainable mobility initiatives. They're really cool. We also have a YouTube channel, a LinkedIn group, a website, so I'll include links in the description, and we work across the whole of Southeast Asia. So if you're in the region, do check us out. So in this project, we are tasked with developing institutional capacity across the 10 Southeast Asian countries, and we work with the local governments and national ministries. Here in Cambodia, my office is based in the Ministry of Public Works and Transport, and I work very hands-on with the ministerial staff in training them on best practice concepts and principles, most of which come from the Western world, because we have very much urbanized, made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we would like to avoid that Southeast Asia makes the same mistakes as they undergo this wave of rapid development. Our approach is really to teach them the necessary skills. It's kind of like the Chinese proverb, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he can eat for a lifetime. And we focus mostly on the teaching part, so when our project comes to an end and we leave, they can still apply some of the concepts and principles that we introduced to them. Stay Cambodia! Cambodia! So why am I telling you all of this? Well, one, I want to enlighten you to this fascinating profession, and two, the next phase of our project is coming up, and we have some very big and bold ambitions that will involve working with much more than local authority and national ministries, but they'll involve working with you. You are the people of Phnom Penh, of Cambodia, of the ASEAN region, of the world. We all need to come together and work together to create more desirable and sustainable urban areas and urban mobility systems. And if there's one thing the COVID lockdowns have shown us, is that we would probably enjoy having more public space to walk, to cycle, and to play. Case in point, if we look around today in the car-freer streets, we see people have come out to walk, cycle, and participate in all kinds of different sports, which is great for our mental and physical health and should therefore be encouraged. So obviously, it's not easy for local governments to just snap their fingers and create more public space for the people, but there is one thing we can do that comes at a very low cost, and that is the concept of car-free days, which now exist in many countries around the world. And every year on the 22nd of September, they close a number of main streets. Let me jump in here. I just want to clarify that this car-free day is set to take place on very carefully selected streets and is not a citywide event. And also, while I'm here, let me give you a quick 1-minute history of the car-free day. Let's go. So the concept first emerged in the 1950s in Belgium and the Netherlands as a form of political protest, and really only became part of the sustainability movement in the 1990s in Europe, which was really aimed at promoting non-motorized transport. So anything related to walking and cycling, and it had the overall goal of raising awareness about the negative impacts of the car. And by the mid-1990s, many proactive cities made up of strong local governments and civil society movements took up these activities, and by the mid-2000s, this became a European-wide event. And since, many additional urbanism activities have emerged around this concept, including the European Mobility Week. And since this concept has spread around the world to hundreds of cities, including Kigali in Rwanda, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Bogota in Colombia, and closer to home in 2007, even Jakarta in Indonesia, which is really quite cool because Jakarta is one of the most congested cities in the world. And there, on the car-free day, they closed some of the main avenues in the city and invited people to come out and run, cycle, and play, basically reclaim the streets from the private car. And the people of Jakarta found so much enjoyment in the event that in 2012 they decided to make it a weekly event every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and this took place right up until, unfortunately, COVID. So if a city like Jakarta that's 5 times bigger than Phnom Penh, for sure we can do it right here. It's a really awesome day. And it seems kind of crazy at first to not let cars in. Businesses are often opposed to the idea. They think if cars can't access their shop, how will people come and buy? Well, time and time again, this has not proven to be true, but instead, because the environment is made so pleasant and people can walk slowly, they will spend more time walking and looking at your goods in the shops, and it is actually conducive to higher business. So that's the idea my team and myself are exploring for Phnom Penh, starting with the 22nd of September. Anyway, quite an unusual video. It's something I wanted to get out while Central Market is still void of very heavy traffic. This brings us to the end of yet another video. Thank you for joining. Before we go, I'd like to clarify and summarize a few things. First, this is not my concept. It has existed since long before my time and has been implemented with a high degree of success in many hundreds of cities around the world. And it's also an idea that my team and myself have been sort of massaging together. Right now, with us all emerging from the lockdown, it seemed like a good time to enlighten you, the broader public, on this concept. I fully acknowledge that this will not solve the worsening congestion and pollution problems in Phnom Penh, but there is a bigger picture to all of this. Let me explain. It's really more about changing our mindset and the way we think of our lives in the city, and the car-free day really serves to remind us that the streets are not and should not be exclusively for the private car. If that's the approach we take, we're going to create very hostile, noisy, polluted, and unpleasant, dangerous environments, not to mention the widespread environmental degradation caused by a very car-dependent society. And 2, it reminds us that we need, and perhaps unknowingly want, more open space to walk, cycle, engage in all sorts of recreational activities, all those things that make life worth living. We are, after all, social beings, and our cities are our homes, and increasingly so. By 2050, 75% of the world population will be living in cities, which is scary if our cities are to become these hostile concrete jungles. So more than ever, we need to rethink how we plan, engineer, and design our cities. Because for us humans to work well, we need to live well, and to live well, we need to build strong and healthy communities, and that really doesn't happen if we're all stuck in our private cars in congestion or sitting on the roadside next to noisy traffic breathing in exhaust fumes. And of course, car-free days are only one of a host of activities and events we need to look into to improve our urban existence. For example, we should also look at more permanent car-free streets. For example, along Basak Lane, a lively street that is lined with bars and restaurants that's unfortunately lying dormant these days. Here, I really think traffic should be banned because it's only a matter of time before one of us has a few too many beers and gets knocked down by a tuk-tuk. And after all, banning vehicles from this street will probably only serve to increase business. Look at Pub Street in Siem Reap, for example. Banning this street to traffic was probably the best decision they ever made. And to add to this, we do need better walking and cycling infrastructure. As you're probably very well aware, Walking, the most natural forms of human activities, has been rendered almost impossible in Phnom Penh. The streets really are an obstacle course, which further reinforces the need to drive a private vehicle. And if the proposal is to reduce the overall number of vehicles on the street, we do need to provide public and shared mobility alternatives to really make private mobility optional and no longer necessary. And for this, there are some great solutions already available, like the cyclos, tuk-tuks, and the go-tos. And yes, improving the urban and transport environment does sound like a lot of work and does sound extremely expensive, but we also have to think of the cost of not doing so. In the current business as usual approach, Phnom Penh is already motorizing at 11% per year. So what will the city look like in 5, 10, 20 years? I don't want to think about it. It sounds like absolute paralysis. And if the majority of your population is stuck in congestion, this impairs the movement of people and goods, which has a huge economic cost. And building more roads, the usual approach, has proven time and time again to simply not work. And there's a nice quote to illustrate this. Adding highway lanes to deal with traffic congestion is like loosening your belt to cure obesity. It simply does not work. So Cambodia, please don't make the same mistakes as the West. And as previously mentioned in the video, the decisions that we make today will have a long-lasting legacy. So let's make sustainable decisions. Okay, so how exactly can we pull this off? Well, what we really need is both a top-down approach from a proactive government, and my team and we will push for this through the summer project. And a side activity we're also working on is a Southeast Asian Mobility Week, similar to what's been organized in Europe. And we also need a bottom-up civil society movement to push the government to organize such activity. And a great place to start is exactly with activities like a Phnom Penh Car-Free Day. Fortunately, in Phnom Penh, we do have a strong civil society presence already, and we've proven to be very capable of coming together for positive change. The Local for Local and Art for Food campaigns have been wildly successful. I have contributed to both, and I have been speaking to them about this Car-Free Day concept, and we are all on board. So do please join us in this activity, and let's make Phnom Penh, our home, the most livable, happy, and healthy city possible. Okay, I will end it here because I can talk about this for days. If you've made it to the end of the video, a huge thank you. I really do appreciate you. And if you enjoy this type of content, please do consider liking and subscribing. I do want to continue making content that can help bring about positive change. And on a final note, I would like to say a huge thanks to my work colleagues and also to civil society here in Phnom Penh, especially Local for Local and Art for Food. If you haven't checked them out, they are doing incredible work. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, we do accept contributions from you, and it will go towards a really great cause. So that's it. Until next time, take good care, guys. Thanks again. I poured my heart, soul, and entire weekend into this video, so I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.